Awesome. So take just a minute and think about what would you do with $1 million? Just think of one good thing. What would you do with $1 million? Okay. Now, what would you do with $5? You might still be able to buy one of those fancy Dijon ketchups. Right? What would you do if you just had $1? Now, I fold origami. Some of the people in here who know me know I fold origami, so I take that last dollar and fold it into something pretty. But today's talk's really about resources, okay? So if you look at the first line, that was our 1,000,501. The second line, it's 2018. I was born in 1969, so I'm 49 years old. That's what it is. My name's Alan Russell. I teach in the Math and Statistics Department. Students, any students in the room that have had me? No, but lots of students call me Doc. That's been my nickname since high school because there were 7 of us that did everything and together, and I was the chubby one with glasses, so I was Doc. And now I got a PhD, so why not, okay? So that next set of numbers just lets you know how old I am. Now, when I was growing up, the third set of numbers there lets you know I was raised in a 10 by 50 foot trailer where I lived for the first 18 years of my life. We were poor. So what does it mean to live an authentic life? It means to lay yourself bare, I think, in front of people. So I'm going to share with you stuff that I don't normally share with people. But I grew up in a tiny home before it was fashionable, okay? And with all my friends and just anybody I met, they always had more money than we did. They lived in nicer places and stuff like that. So I started off being ashamed of that fact. And I would make excuses why kids couldn't come to my house. And I wouldn't eat lunch at school because I wouldn't go Monday to pick up the free lunch tickets, you know, so I'd go weeks at a time without eating lunch. My mom bought, so we could sporadically afford heating oil for our house. We had a tank out back that would hold the heating oil. And she bought these really rickety old metal frame bunk beds. And she hung a comforter over the top just so that my body heat would keep it warm. And that's how I knew what a turtle headache was. If you sit in an enclosed space and the carbon dioxide comes, you'll get a headache. So I had a turtle headache a lot of times from sleeping through the night in that. And she'd say, well, when you wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom, just, air it out a little bit, just get some fresh air in there. And it's funny because when you're a kid, you don't think about that necessarily as being all that poor. But boy, you do now. You go, that was some poor times. So I would omit details when I was talking to people. It seemed like it was a very unauthentic life at that point. When I was trying to pretend to be more. Met a girl when I was 15, and that didn't go well because I pretended to be more than I was. So that was just how early life was, okay? The next line says 1 equals 1. The only thing that got me out of mill work and just, low-paying jobs and stuff like that was my brain. So I was valedictorian in my high school class and first in my family to go to college and didn't know when to stop, so I got a PhD because that's what you do, right? So that's just what that's about, and that got me out of everything. So it also got me into Presbyterian College. Go Blue Hose. Anybody? A couple of you. All right. The next thing I've got here is 11/17/87. So a couple of months into my freshman year, I met a sophomore. She was cute. Her name was Robin. And our first kiss was on 11/17/87. And it was neat because the next line you'll see is 14 by 56. She grew up in a 14 by 56 foot trailer. Now, if you do the multiplication, you'll know that it's 784, not 1084. The extra 300 square feet, her dad ripped out a wall and built an extra living room. So, she knew what it was like to grow up that way. And 3 years after that first kiss, we got married on 11/17/1990. All right? There we go. It was a very traditional wedding. Tuxedo, white dress, red, white, and black, very nice and all that sort of stuff. Early life was good. We still lived in a trailer. right after we got married, I bought us, let's see, that one was 14 by 70. So we were moving up in the world, right? Still had wheels, but 14 by 70. So then 8/25 of 97 was the first day that I came to Elon College. And it was Elon College back then, everybody. That was the date I started. And if you look at the line below, 3 plus 3 plus 3 equals 30,500. I was an undergraduate for 3 years because I was going to marry a sophomore, and I didn't want to stick around an extra year without her. So I was 3 years as an undergraduate. As a graduate student, I was working, so it took me 3 years to get my master's degree, and then I had bills to pay. I couldn't stick around and be a PhD student for very long, so I was 3 years as a PhD student. And my starting salary was $30,500, but I was able to, those of you who know Roz Reichert, I was able to talk her into an extra $1,000 because I was also had an offer on the table from Valdosta State for $40,000. And you go, why is a poor kid not teaching at Valdosta State? Well, they wanted me to go and convince a bunch of old guys to use calculators in their classroom. And then Elon felt like family from the first day I got here, so it wasn't really a choice, okay? Let's see, the next one is 3 plus 3 equals 2005. So in 2005, I got tenure, and my grandparents were in failing health, and my mom was run ragged trying to take care of them. So she moved with them up to my house. It is an important thing to note that my mother lives with me. I do not live with my mother, okay? It's a very important distinction. So at around 2005, I'd gotten tenure, and money was no longer the object, right? I'd gotten over being the poor kid, basically. It turns out that you either have enough money or not enough. And when you have enough, it's enough, and you don't worry about it anymore. You start to focus on the things that are more important. So that was the time that I got into Myers-Briggs, those of you who know and love me, love languages, all that sort of stuff to help make me a better person and focus on what was really important, okay? So then, 6 minus 3 equals 1,500. So I've been teaching life stories a couple of summers. Thank you, Richard. And this last summer, these kids had an affinity for the word countless. They had had countless phone calls, and they had sat on the couch for countless hours. And those of my math friends who are in the room, we know better, don't we? So countless means something very specific to a math major. If I took the numbers 1, 2, 3 and just kept on going, it's infinite, but it's countable because I can count them, obviously, right? If I stuck a 0 in there and all the negative numbers, right? I could still count those because I have a counting scheme. It would be 0, 1, -1, 2, -2. And I'm going to count all of them. So that's twice as big as that original infinite set, but it's still countable. So it's hard for something to be countless, okay? It has to be so infinite that you can't figure out how to count it. It turns out the numbers between 0 and 1, if you add in all the reals and all that, just every number you could possibly think of between 0 and 1, that's uncountable. That's a lot of numbers, okay? But countless is one of those things that people throw around, and most human activity is finite, right? And that's one of the things that I focused on over the course of 1,500 days. That's what this next one is. So we had our house built up to 6. 3 of them died within 1,500 days. Actually, it was 1,470, so I did all these calculations on a computer with the dates. But it was 1,470, but we found out about a month before my grandfather died that he was going to die. So it was about 1,500 days from the time he passed away, and then we lost my grandmother, and then my wife died. Sorry. Massive heart attack. But I'm okay. I didn't mean for that to happen. So, that was rough on the family. I practiced this too. And I didn't cry when I practiced. But here I am. So, the next line is, how many days can you spend with somebody? Well, I was actually with Robin. 900, 9,000. Golly. Whew. Whew. Almost 10,000 days. First kiss to last kiss. We were married for almost 8,900. They were good. The last 270 were the best because we lived on campus and we had 450 children. That's what the 270 and the 450 is. We had 450 adopted kids in that colonnades, boy. And Miss Robin was loving it. She was working at the bookstore, and everybody in colonnades knew Doc and Miss Robin. So that was awesome. Her last day was day number 17,167. It actually was her 47th birthday. And you can't think of a better day than her last day. She got to eat cake that I had made. I cooked her dinner. I had vacuumed. I had helped her with a whole bunch of chores because she was acts of service. Those of you that follow love languages, she was acts of service. And I treated her like a queen, right? And her parents and her brother live out of state, and she spoke to them on the phone. How many times does that happen in a day? It just doesn't happen. So if you're going to write up a last day, that's a pretty darn good one. So here I am at 17,949, which turns out to be 49 years, 1 month, and 21 days, and 1.5 billion seconds. That's what that next number is. So it takes about 32 years for you to live a billion seconds, so then about 64 for 2, and about 96 for that third billion. So some of us are between 1 and 2 billion, some of us under 1 billion, rock on. You got a lot of time left. Some of us between 1 and 2 billion, some of us between 2 and 3 billion. Some of us want to see 3 billion, some of us are like, I don't know, okay? But it's a finite resource. Should you worry about spending every second to its fullest? No, because there's Facebook and traffic and things like that that will eat up your time, right? Binge watching Netflix, you don't have to worry about every second. But if I can only share one thing with you, it's try and live each day to the fullest. That's the idea. So my daughter got tired of me moping around, and she said, you ought to go out and date, right? And I read some information that said you're only as slick as you were the last time you went out on a date. And I thought, I was 18 when I went out on that date with Robin. And when I re-entered the dating pool, I acted like an 18-year-old. I didn't know what was going on or anything like that. But I was leading an authentic life. I was laid bare for everybody to see, and if they didn't like it, that was fine, and if they did like it, that was fine too. And one young lady actually found out that she did like it a lot. And we started dating, and we've been married, this next little break, 314 days today. So we got married last October. It was very different from the first wedding. The first one was tux and white dress. This one was a deep wine dress, and I wore a kilt. So, it was very different. And I've never seen any two more women so different, so great, but so different. Those of you who follow Myers-Briggs, Robin was an ISTJ. Jody is an ENFP. That's why I was allowed to wear a kilt on my wedding, because she's an ENFP, right? So if I make it to March 9th of 2042, I'll be 72 years old, 7 months and 21 days, and I will have had the same length marriage, 24 years and some change, with two wonderful people, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to this song and just leave you to think about the days are the resource that we have, and it's important how you spend them, okay? Thank you for your time.